This video on hardwood bow drilling has been a long time in the making. It's taken me about 18 months to collect all the wood species that I wanted to try. It's taken me more than 3 weeks to shoot all the video clips and hours of editing after that. It's been my most ambitious project in a very long time, and it probably will result in the longest video I've ever made. I do hope you'll spend some time with it though. I think I've maybe managed to bust one or two myths, and I've got some interesting observations that I'd like to share with you at the end. Oh, by the way, this is my 100th fire making video. I really do hope you'll enjoy it. Stay tuned. When I first started learning about bow drilling several years ago, most people told me that there were some woods that were just too hard to use in fire by friction. I took them at their word, and I spent most of my time learning how to find soft or medium density woods. I began kind of questioning the hardwood limitation though about 4 years ago. Every year in the fall, my local Boy Scout Council holds a Cub Scout to Scout transition camporee, and the firecrafters in my troop are commonly asked to teach fire building and fire safety. That year, the camp ranger had cut down and split up a bunch of dead ash trees and had stacked up some wood in a shelter near the big fire ring where the scouts and I were working. Well, one of the scouts picked up a piece of the ash and started crafting a bow drill kit. Made a halfway decent fireboard and spindle. Played with it a bit. He had to leave around lunchtime, so he left it on the ground and walked away from it. I was afraid it was going to get tossed in the fire, so I picked it up and started whittling away with it. Well, this was a little bit after lunch, and there were some other scout troops and Cub Scout dens walking around, and an elder statesman, scoutmaster from another troop, came up to me and saw me whittling away on that ash kit, and he kind of shook his head and all but told me I was wasting my time, that I would never get it to work. Ash was just simply too hard. Well, I didn't know any better. I really didn't even know what ash was at that point. So I kept whittling away. I whittled on the spindle. I worked in a divot. I burned that divot in, notched it, and I got an ember on my very first try. That elder statesman, scoutmaster, was watching me, and I remember him shaking his head and walking away. I don't think he said a word to me though. Well, later that afternoon, another scout came up to me and asked me to teach him how to use a bow drill, and I taught him with that very same ash kit. After he spent some time with it, learning to get his technique down and check his balance and such, he made his first ember with that ash kit. Since then, I've made several bow drill kits out of ash. I've used it with pump drills. I've used it as fireboards for some hand drilling. I've had a lot of success with it. I've also used other hardwoods. I've used honeysuckle, I've used pear, and some others. Some I've made videos about and some I haven't. My general observation though has been that if your technique is good enough and your form is proper, wood hardness just doesn't seem to matter. Well, to test some of my ideas, and I wasn't in a real big hurry, but to test some of my ideas over the past year and a half or so, I have put together a collection of bow drills made from a variety of different wood species of varying hardness. Overall, I've made 28 different kits. Some of the woods I had to buy because I couldn't find it locally, but most of the rest of the stuff I've picked up in the woods, either here in southwest Ohio or central Indiana, northern Kentucky, maybe southwest Virginia where I used to live and mostly hike and camp. Most of the woods that I have gotten to work in the past, I've made videos about. The ones that I have completely failed with, I haven't bothered making videos about. And all of the rest, 16 in particular, I'm going to test as part of this video. I shot the clips that you're going to see in a few minutes in more or less random order, but I assembled them for this video according to wood hardness from softest to hardest according to the Janka hardness scale. If you're not familiar with that, I'm going to put a link to the Janka hardness test and Janka hardness scale down in the video description so that you can go study. As a general reference though, balsa, which is known to be a very soft wood, has a Janka hardness value of about 100 pounds, whereas the hardest wood in my neck of the woods, Osage Orange, has a Janka hardness value of about 2,600 pounds. To save time overall for this video, I'm not going to take each of the embers that I make to flame. You've seen me do that bunches of times. I'm also not trying to make super fast embers. I'm trying to make reliable, solid embers. That said, most of the embers that I made successfully, I made in under a minute. Most of them were just a little over 30 seconds or so. The data that I ultimately recorded for my tests was the number of attempts it took me before I made my first successful ember, the time that it took me to make that first successful ember, and a subjective evaluation of how difficult it was. And for reference, I took red or slippery elm to be my medium difficulty wood, meaning that some were easier, some were harder, more difficult for me to make embers with. Red or slippery elm is something that firecrafters world over are going to be quite familiar with. So I took that as my medium standard. When it was all done, I ultimately gathered and collected all of my data and assembled it into a nice big table. And I'm going to put a link down in the description so that you can get access to this table if you'd like to examine it. After I put all the data together, like I said, I shot all my video randomly, but once I put it all together in a nice table, some trends emerged. And I'd like to discuss that with you at the end in a little more detail. But for now, here's a bunch of video clips of me trying to make embers. Stay tuned. This is silver maple. I'm working on my second fireboard, my third divot, and my 10th attempt overall. No joy. There's no ember in here. That was my 10th attempt, and I've given it all I've got. I promised myself when I started this video that I would only go for 10 tries before I gave up. As you can tell, I'm pretty winded. So far, silver maple does not work for me. We'll keep trying later on. This is red or slippery elm. First attempt after burn-in. Got a nice good size ember here. Elm works. This is Eastern Red Cedar Heartwood. This is my 5th attempt. Smells good. I got an ember. That is a nice big ember. It's my 5th try today. I have to tell you, that's the first ember that I've ever gotten with red cedar heartwood. It's been notoriously difficult for me to use over the years. I think heartwood, red cedar heartwood, has been the nemesis of bow drillers for ages. Anyway, that's my first ever red cedar heartwood bow drill ember. Takes some effort, but it does work. What do you know? This is Eastern Red Cedar. The fireboard is mostly sapwood, and the spindle is about half and half sapwood and heartwood. First attempt after burn-in. As expected, that was easy. Big, fat, easy ember using cedar. No surprises there. This is Black Cherry. It's my 5th attempt. Smoking like crazy if it'll just stay lit. On my previous attempts it would smoke like crazy but then go out. This one looks like it's about to stay. Alright folks, I'm going to call this an ember. This one was a tough one. Black cherry. This is my 5th attempt. My previous attempts, it would smoke like crazy, but then go out. But this one stayed ignited. That bee doesn't sting me. Anyhow, it took some effort, but wild cherry works, or black cherry works. This is Black Walnut Heartwood. This is my 2nd fireboard, my 3rd spindle, the 4th divot in this particular fireboard, and my 10th attempt overall. Wish me luck. If it'll just stay lit. No joy, folks. There's no ember in here. That was pretty close to 100 strokes on the bow. I've tried 10 different times with 2 fireboards and 3 spindles. I produce choking clouds of smoke and plenty of dust, and mostly it looks like pretty decent dust, but it just won't stay lit. So for me, Black Walnut has not yet worked. Rats. This is Black Walnut Sapwood. It's my first try after burning in a fresh divot. Sure does smell good. Got a nice big ember on my very first try. That wasn't too hard either. Black walnut sapwood definitely works. This is red oak. It's my first attempt after burn-in. I think there's an ember in there. Yep. The bow started slipping. There's a nice good ember in there. First try, pretty easy. Red oak works. This is sugar maple, also known as hard maple. This is my second try after burn-in. Wind's trying to blow it away, but I've got an ember in here. There's a good ember. Got that on my second try. Wind's working against me today. Apple works, or excuse me, hard maple, sugar maple works. This is honey locust. First attempt after burn-in. Absolutely enormous ember. It's so bright out here today I didn't see it. Honey locust works. This is Black Locust. It's my second divot and my fourth attempt overall. Looks like I got an ember this time. It's trying to fall apart. All right, I got an ember on my fourth try with Black Locust. The dust is a little crumbly and the wind is working against me, but it looks like it's coalescing nicely. Black Locust works. This is an unknown variety of apple. It's my fifth attempt. believe there's an ember in here this time. Yep. Got an ember in here this time. Took me 5 tries. It's pretty tough stuff. The dust is real crumbly with apple. The ember doesn't want to coalesce very well. There's an ember. Apple works. This is American Hornbeam, sometimes also known as Musclewood. Some folks even call it an ironwood. American Hornbeam. This is my 3rd attempt after burn-in. On my 2nd attempt, the gust of wind blew away most of my embers. So I'm not sure if that was a fair failure. Here goes, 3rd attempt. There's an ember in there if the wind don't blow it away. There's a nice big ember in there. Again, the wind blew away my 2nd ember, so I'm not sure if that really counts as a fail or not. Nevertheless, this was my 3rd attempt. American Hornbeam works. This is Shagbark Hickory. 1st attempt after burn-in. Got a big ember. Wind's a little gusty right now. trying to blow it away. There's an ember in there. All right, Shagbark Hickory works. This is Dogwood, one of the hardest woods in my area anyway. It's my first attempt after a fresh burn-in. Wish me luck. It's trying to coalesce, but there's an ember there. Got an ember on my first try with Dogwood. It's trying to coalesce. My dust is a little crumbly. I'd probably give that a second to come together as a nice ember, but nevertheless, Dogwood works. Well, I'm getting kind of tired and I'm about ready to quit for the day, but I'm going to give this Dogwood another try and see if I can get an ember that'll coalesce a little bit better. Here goes. Wind's a little gusty today. There's a big ember in here. It's still kind of crumbly though. I think with dogwood, I would probably use my tinder bundle to catch my ember so it didn't break apart when I transfer it. But otherwise, dogwood works. That's a nice ember. This is Osage Orange, my longtime nemesis. I've been attempting without success to get embers using Osage Orange for about 3 years now. This is my 10th and final attempt today and for this particular project. I've been saving the dust between attempts just to give myself some little bit of advantage. I haven't done that with any other woods in this series though. But wish me luck. Maybe 10th time's a charm. Choking clouds of smoke. I went clean through the fireboard. My spindle is smoking like crazy. No joy. Went clean through the fireboard. This is the dust I collected over probably the last 5 tries. There's no ember in there. It doesn't seem to be too coarse either. But for some reason, I just can't get it hot enough to ignite. It looks to me like it'll start smoking, start forming an ember, but then when I quit bowing, it'll eventually just kind of go out. So anyway, Osage Orange remains my biggest nemesis. I'm done trying it for this particular project, but no doubt I'll continue to try it in the future. This is all of the dust I collected from my 10 Osage Orange attempts today. Never could get it to work just from friction generated heat, but I'm going to see if it'll ignite using the butane insert of my Zippo lighter. Let's just see if it'll burn at all. Well, there's for sure an ember in there now, folks. You can see it smoldering and it's growing. Right over here is the ember. That's where I hit it with my butane insert. It's glowing and growing. So it looks like the dust that I'm generating will actually burn. No doubt a butane torch produces a lot more heat than just a friction. So maybe something inside of the Osage Orange that increases the ignition temperature and keeps it from lighting just based on friction. Oh well, lesson learned. I'll keep at it. But for this project, Osage is done. This is the Osage Orange dust that I ignited with my butane insert inside of my Zippo lighter. I threw it in the fire pit and it's still going. Look at that. So that dust will actually ignite and smolder and burn, but it seems like it needs more heat than I can generate through friction to get it going. Well, it's getting kind of cold outside and the sun's starting to go down, so I thought I would move indoors where it's a little bit warmer and a little bit quieter. I'm also going to work with some notes. I hope you'll forgive me for that. That some of you know that I'm an engineering professor, and I always make sure I take good notes to class when I have important things I want to share without forgetting them. So, sitting out in front of us is the collection of bow drill kits that I've tried over the past several months. And I've got them sorted into two broad categories. This group over here, I've gotten to work pretty quickly. This group over here, I have not yet had any success with. Do you see any difference between the two groups? This is my successful group and my not yet successful group. I sure see a difference. This group over here is mostly unpigmented. Some of the woods, this red oak, for example, is almost white. Whereas this group over here, the group of kits that I have not yet had any success with, are very heavily pigmented, of various shades and colors. I should point out that most of these kits represent single samples of whatever wood species I was working with. And a single data point does not constitute a trend. Whereas I was very successful, for example, with this red oak kit. Another red oak kit I might have some trouble with, who knows. And even though this Black Walnut Heartwood kit gave me a fit, maybe a different kit out of Black Walnut Heartwood might work. A single data point does not constitute a trend. Another thing I want to point out is even though there seems to be a correlation between pigmented woods not working and unpigmented woods working pretty well, I don't understand the underlying mechanism. Correlation does not attribute cause and effect, but there does seem to be a correlation between success and not yet success. I don't want to say failure because I'm probably going to keep trying. But nevertheless, heavily pigmented woods, for the most part for me, so far have not been successful in bow drill kits. So I want to point out some interesting things that I observed and some outliers. The first interesting thing I'd like to point out are these two kits. These are both Black Walnut. This is Black Walnut Sapwood, and this is Black Walnut Heartwood. These two pieces were cut from the same split log on the same day. A friend of mine gave me a split piece of firewood that had some heartwood and some sapwood in it. I cut these two kits out on the very same day. They should be the same hardness, and the only difference between them is the sapwood is unpigmented and the heartwood is really dark. I got an ember on the first try with the sapwood. I think it took me about 37 seconds. And even after I stopped filming it, I tried several more times with the heartwood, and I've still probably 13, 14 tries into it, and I still have not got it to work. So that's a real interesting observation to me. Same piece of wood, same species, cut on the same day. Unpigmented sapwood works great. Heavily pigmented heartwood does not. Some other interesting observations. I've gotten some outlier kits set aside over here. This is my silver maple kit. Silver maple, on average, is the second softest wood according to the Janka hardness scale that I can find in my area. The only wood that I've tried that's softer than this is white pine. Silver maple just gave me a fit. I tried several more times after I stopped shooting footage for this video, and I think I'm up to 14 failures with this silver maple kit. But this represents a single sample. I'm going to ask my friend who gave this to me for another piece of his silver maple, and I'm going to keep trying. If I get it to work, I'll make another video about silver maple a little bit later on. But it's soft and it's unpigmented, but for now I have to put it into the group of as yet unsuccessful woods. That's an outlier. Here's another somewhat outlier. This is my red cedar sapwood kit that I got to work, I think, on my 5th try. But this is the ember I made with this kit was the first time that I'd ever gotten red cedar heartwood to work. I've tried on several occasions with other cedar heartwood kits and have had failure after failure. So I'm not sure if I'm ready to put red cedar heartwood in my readily successful pile or not. I think for the time being, I'm going to leave it in the not so likely to work for me category. Interestingly enough, the absolute most difficult kit that I've worked with in a long time is this one. This is white pine. It's a white pine fireboard with a white pine spindle. I've used white pine fireboards with wildflower stalks and have made some of my absolute fastest embers ever. But when I was using white pine spindle on white pine fireboard, this kit gave me a fit. It took me 10 or 12 tries before I could dial it in. I eventually had to back off on pressure and slow down my bow speed. I think I was just burning through the dust. But even though it's unpigmented and the softest kit here, I'll put it in the successful category, but it was super soft. And the Dogwood kit, which represents the hardest wood that I was successful with in my area, I got 3 embers on 3 tries with this. This is way, way, way harder than this, Dogwood versus white pine. Dogwood successful 3 tries out of 3. White pine, super soft, took me 10 or 12 tries before I got it dialed in. Here's another kit that I want to share with you. This is spalted tamarind. This is an African hardwood, an exotic hardwood. There is a website called the Wood Database where the fella sorts woods by a variety of characteristics, including color, pigmentation, and hardness. I tried to find the hardest unpigmented wood that was in that database that I could also find for sale. And this was the hardest one that I could find for sale in that database. It's got an average Janka hardness value of 2,690 pounds. That's even harder than my Osage Orange. Notice that it is unpigmented, super hard, but I failed with it. I've tried 12 different times to make this kit work and I can't get it to go. So even though it's unpigmented, I've got to put it in the not yet successful group. How about that? Let's see. Let me tell you a little bit about some of these super hardwoods over here. I've got several samples of exotic African hardwoods. I've got, this is wenge. I couldn't locate my spindle. I tried this a long time ago. This is Purple Heart. I also lost its spindle. This is Brazilian Ebony. And this is Lignum vitae. Lignum vitae, according to some, is the second hardest on average wood in the world, with an average Janka hardness value of 4,390 pounds. Depending on who's making the list, this usually ends up in the top 5. With all of these super hardwoods, I was able to make choking clouds of smoke. and lots of rich dark dust. None of the embers would ignite just through friction, however. When I took the dust, just like with my Osage Orange kit that I demonstrated a few minutes ago, the dust that I collected with these African hardwoods would ignite when I lit it with my butane lighter insert. Butane burns at about 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. I just can't get that hot just through friction alone. So there seems to be something about the pigmentation in these woods, with some outliers. Seems to be something in the pigmentation of these woods that keeps the embers from igniting just based on the heat I can generate through friction. Here's my table, again, that I mentioned earlier. Remember, I collected all of my data, shot the footage rather randomly, but I sorted the video clips in this video from softest to hardest wood, and I also collected my data in this table from hardest at the top to softest at the bottom. And once I got all the data collected into this table, some trends emerged. Not surprisingly, some of the woods that I considered to be the most challenging, remember I used red elm as my medium challenging standard. Woods that I noticed that were more challenging than red elm tended to be harder woods, and they tended to require a little bit more time, a few more seconds for me to make embers. And that kind of manifests itself in this table. Not surprisingly, some of the medium hard woods I personally judge to be medium challenging. If I was teaching a scout or a young person or novice bow driller how to do bow drilling, I would start with the medium hard woods. I would start with red elm or poplar or cottonwood, for example. Those are medium hard woods, and I subjectively rank them as medium difficulty. I'll put a link to this table down in the description so you can get access to it and study it if you'd like. One other observation I want to make sure I share is that for reasons unknown, as the woods became harder and harder in this group, the embers that I formed seem to have more crumbly dust. I haven't figured out why that is yet. I did point this out with the Dogwood kit, but I think with the hard woods, you can make embers for sure, but you might want to make sure that you catch your embers in your tinder bundle directly so that they don't fall apart when you transfer them. So that's it, folks. Broadly speaking, my observation is, at least with woods that I can find where I live and camp and hike, if it's standing dead or properly seasoned, the wood hardness just doesn't seem to matter as long as your technique and form are reasonably good. Hardness just doesn't matter. And for reasons as yet unknown, probably it's best to avoid heavily pigmented woods. So that's it. Wood hardness just doesn't seem to matter as long as your form is good enough.
It seems only proper that a fire making video ought to include at least one fire, so I'm going to close this one out with some footage I shot of a fire some scouts and I built a few weeks back. As I mentioned earlier, the firecrafters in my troop are commonly asked to teach fire building and safety to Cub Scouts at a Cub Scout to Scout transition camporee each fall. This year we were also asked to build the fire lay for the closing Campfire program. We had a lot of fun doing it. By most measures, this was only a modest firecrafter fire. The flames only got up to maybe 8 or 9 feet in the air. Enjoy it. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Now that's a firecrafter fire.
That is a firecrafter fire. You guys did awesome. I'll make sure Katie mentions that too. Oh my God, spicy.